When it comes to renditions of the iconic song While My Guitar Gently Weeps, there is so often just one version that everyone talks about. The iconic performance from the 2004 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, including Steve Winwood, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, George Harrison's son Danny Harrison, and Prince. And it is the 3-minute face-melting solo. Prince's incredible onstage antics, bringing the vibe, falling back into the audience, throwing his guitar up into the air at the end, and by the fact that for many, prior to seeing that performance, Prince was not really this kind of guitar god, but was someone much more associated with a less guitar-driven, more poppy kind of style of music. Kiss! But Prince showed that he more than had the chops in one of, I think, the kind of most iconic live solos and performances maybe of all time. Now I love Prince and I love Prince's guitar solo on that track as much as the next guy. But there has always been one version that has stuck with me ever since I first heard it when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I think it is super underrated. And today I'm going to show you why. Yes, this is Jeff Healey's version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps from the 1990 album Hell to Pay. Unbelievable playing, unbelievable singing, just an incredible version of the song that George Harrison himself actually played rhythm acoustic guitar on, and he added to the vocal harmonies. So, if that isn't a seal of approval, then I don't know what is. Now, as blues players, there's a huge amount that we can take from this song, and we're going to do a classic Happy Bluesman deep dive into this and break down some of those key things that you can use, not just to jam over this track, improvise over While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which I think is probably about as much fun as you can have on the guitar. It is such a cool track to jam over. But also, these are going to be concepts that you can apply whenever you are playing, improvising, soloing in any musical context. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. So, first things first, we are talking about adding extra colours into the mix. Jeff Healey's, a lot of what he's doing here is just kind of classic A minor pentatonic stuff or A minor blues scale stuff, because we're in the key of A minor, everyone's favourite, but there is one additional note that he targets a lot, both in this main solo and in the intro solo, which I'll play in a moment, which really alters the flavour of what he's doing. If we break down that kind of intro for a second, the first bit of that solo, we have this. All kind of just classic A minor pentatonic stuff. But then he goes this. And this note here, for the keen-eyed amongst you, you will know that that is not appearing in our A minor pentatonic scale. So when we add that note into the mix, it sounds like that. Now that note, which is from a theoretical intervallic point of view, is the major second, or the ninth when we shift it up into an octave, is one of my favourite notes that is available. It is so awesome. It's a major interval, but it appears in both a range of major scales like the major pentatonic Mixolydian mode, but also in minor scales like the Aeolian mode, the Dorian mode. So it's kind of this note that is very malleable. You can use it in a whole range of contexts and it sounds awesome. In that first pentatonic shape, we're going to find it there. We're also going to find it on the low E string here. A little bit less relevant from a soloing point of view. And we're going to find it up on the high E string here. And basically you can target that note in a load of cool ways. You can resolve to it. Gonna give a bit of a Santana kind of Latin vibe. You can just include it as part of a broader phrase, kind of like Healey does. And that's gonna add a little bit of extra colour. Or, because it sits right underneath that minor third from the minor pentatonic scale, you can bend it up or slide up, but bending is really what I love here. You can bend it up a semitone into that flat third, and that's going to sound amazing. That's a big, like, Joe Bonamassa does that quite a lot. I'm sure there's a load of other players that I'm forgetting, but really, really cool. Just a super versatile note that can add a real extra flavour into your blues playing without really being too risky. It's not like the blue note where it's adding a huge amount of spice or tension. It's just another flavour. And extra flavours, extra tools, we love those kind of things. So give that a go. Try in that first pentatonic shape just crafting some regular blues licks. Think about adding that other note into the mix. It will open up so many new doors in your playing. Next up, we can't talk about any rendition of While My Guitar Gently Weeps without talking about bending. I mean, Clapton's version, which I absolutely love, by the way, highly underrated, I think. Everyone talks about Prince, but Clapton's version is incredible, and it's the original. You know, it's all about just bending, 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 and the way that he structures that solo is what makes the guitar sound like it's weeping. Healey obviously is throwing a huge amount of bends into the mix. There are different pitches, different lengths, all of that good stuff that I talk about all the time on the channel and in my lessons. But there are two specific things that I would like to highlight here, just again to give you more tools in your toolkit. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is bending the root note. Now at the beginning of that solo starts like this. Okay, so that, we're in the key of A. A, which is found at the 10th fret of the B string, is the tonic note. Now, so often I talk about avoiding bending that note. That note is a point of resolution. If you start to try and bend it kind of, like away, then it can sound super tense and unresolved, but not in a cool blues note kind of a way, just like in a, oh, that guy doesn't really know what he's doing kind of a way. However, we can, by approaching that with a certain set of criteria, create something really, really cool. So, first things first, we need to push that bend a little bit further than normal. We need to push it to the next note of the minor pentatonic scale, which would be the flat third up here. So we're going from 10 to 13. Okay? Which can be quite tricky, but that's the first thing. The second thing is that we have to be quite assertive on that bend. If I just put the track on for a minute and just bend that very slowly, even if I get to pitch, you're going to hear this very unsettled sound in the middle where I've basically disrupted the tonic note, but I haven't taken us to that next note in the scale. It's going to sound really, really weird, like this. So as you could hear there, that didn't sound cool because it just sounded so tense until the point that I reached that 13th fret, that next note up in the scale. So if you want to bend that tonic note, and this applies to any key that you're playing in, you've got to be assertive. You've got to hit that note and just push it right up to that bend in the way that Healey does. Okay, it's going to sound awesome, and you hear this happening all the time. So for example, Hotel California, that awesome solo, that's how that starts. It's in the key of B. Same thing happening there, bending that tonic note of B up a tone and a half. Same thing happens in Comfortably Numb. okay? Which again is also in the key of B. So it's a really, really nice way of adding a bit of power and intensity to your playing and giving you more bending options. Give it a go. It also really builds your ability to target bigger bends and to get to a pitch quickly and assertively, which can be quite difficult because you're relying on muscle memory and not just your ear to kind of guide you to the pitch. So that's the first little bending thing that Healey does, which I love. The second thing that he does, which is a bit of a rock thing, rock, maybe also country, but it just sounds amazing, is when he goes up here and he plays this little bend at the 15th fret of the B string, and then with his little finger grabs the note of the equivalent fret on the string above. It's just, again, another way of getting more life and juice from your bends and giving you more options. And you can apply that concept, which is bend up, grab the note from the scale that you're playing in on the string above. It can be directly on the fret above, and it often is. And then go back to the bend before then playing something different. You can try that all over the place, and it's going to produce different results depending on where you do it. So in that first pentatonic shape, works really, really well. On the G string, if you bend the G string and add that pinky in, you're not necessarily going to be playing the fret directly, the same fret on that next string, but it's going to sound really nice as well. As always, experiment, push this into different positions, but it's just another way of getting you more mileage from a technique that we use so often, but don't often explore in sufficient depth. We don't get into the weeds of what we're doing, and when we do, it opens up so many more options for us. So there we go. Bend, bend, try bending that root note, try adding your pinky into the licks as well, and it's going to be awesome. Next up, we have slides. Slides, and more slides. Now, Jeff Healey, if you guys, for those of you who aren't aware, had a very different style of playing. He actually was playing kind of an electric guitar, like this one, and he was playing Squire Stratocasters mostly, on his lap with a kind of overhand sort of position like that, kind of like a lap steel, and then sliding up and manipulating the strings in that way. I'm not going to try and attempt that, and I would recommend that you guys don't try that either, because it's super difficult to do, and you would really have to adapt yourself to an entirely new way of playing. But I do think that influences the way that Healey played, and the way that he structures both of these solos. So I just played the intro solo there, which is filled with these big slides, so that's how he opens the solo. And there's more slides throughout, and then in the main solo, which I played at the beginning, he kind of has that big sliding section where he's just like hitting these ascending slides and then hitting other notes and then moving up through the positions. Now, again, for those of you who've seen some of my other videos of like connecting the pentatonic shapes and thinking laterally, this is like one of my favorite topics. Because it's very easy for us to get locked into single positions on the fretboard, just playing vertically up and down. All that's good stuff, but it can lead to fairly repetitive and potentially stale patterns over time. So thinking laterally and thinking about how the pentatonic shapes are all connected up and down the fretboard and how you can move between them by sliding, which is exactly what Healey is doing, sounds awesome. Now I've got a video linked below where I go into this in great detail about how to do this. What I'd recommend doing, and actually what Healey's doing here, is he's kind of taking the G string as his kind of guiding thread in that main solo, if you like. and moving up and down that string. And that's a really, really nice way to get started if you're kind of new to this. You think about your pentatonic box shapes on the top 3 strings, which is where we're going to be spending most of our time soloing, and then you move up and down the G string. And then back down again. Obviously, when done like that, it sounds a little bit robotic, but once you get comfortable with that concept, then you can do exactly what Healey's doing, making bigger jumps, making more exciting movements, and sliding as a way of connecting pentatonic shapes, because you don't necessarily want to be thinking, okay, I'm in shape 1, now I want to go to shape 4, now I want to go to shape 5. Those big jumps don't always sound musical and can give your playing a bit of a choppy feel. Well, the opposite is happening here with Healey. He's making these big jumps, they sound exciting, they sound incredible, and he's connecting things up in a real smooth way. So that's a huge takeaway from this solo, and I would say from Healey's playing in general, is use slides as a way of navigating around the fretboard. And when you go for some of those big slides like he does in that opening solo, again, it's a way of creating excitement and bringing a bit of energy to the solo. Think about that Hotel California again. That's in the key of B, but we start right down here. And that big slide from lower down on the fretboard is just an awesome way of kicking that solo off in an emphatic, powerful way. It also will test, again, your ability to connect notes along a single string. So, give that a go. Slide. Slide is a way of connecting ideas, slide in individual shapes. It's such a beautiful vocal expressive technique. It's often underutilized, and it will do so much to lift the quality of your solos. So let's learn from the best. Slide like Healey, and it's going to sound incredible. And the last thing that we can take from this awesome solo is speed. Now, I'm not exactly the fastest shooter in the West, and I'm not even close. In fact, I would say this song, at this moment, but it's going to change in 2026, I would say this song is probably at my technical limit. I can hit the licks, I can get them, but it's not without a little bit of a challenge. And I would be lying to you if I told you that I got those solo pieces down on the first take. In fact, I think my tortured fingers are telling a little bit of a different story. So, whilst I might not be the fastest player, I do value speed, and I think that there are times in any solo where just a little fast lick can just add some life, interest, power, intensity, all that good stuff. You don't need to be ripping it up like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani, but a little bit of punch every now and again can sound amazing. Now, if you are working on this, or if you're trying to get to grips with it, then start nice and simple. What we can do here, and this is actually what Healey does, is we can use legato runs to make our life a little bit easier. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about runs where you are playing hammer-ons and pull-offs so that you don't have to work so hard to synchronize the two hands. So those runs that Healey does in the main solo, they are based around. So by using pull-offs rather than picking, you're not having to work so hard in both hands. So if you are working to get faster, try this little run out, okay? And then I'll show you two little runs, but you can that give you a nice progression path as you get faster. The first run, minor pentatonic, first shape, nice and simple, is just pull-offs all the way. So you're starting here, you're going 8 to 5. Then same thing on the B string. Then on the G string, we're going to include the blue note. So here we're going to go with the pinky to the 8th fret on the G string, which is the blue note. Then down to the 7th, and then down to the 5th, all in one go. Then down to the D string, you're going to go 7, pull off to 5, and then finish off on the tonic. It's obviously not easy, but you can work up to it, and it sounds sort of faster and more impressive than it is, or more difficult than it is. Once you've got that under your fingers and you're kind of, ramping up the pace on that, you can start to increase the complexity slightly by mixing up the order. So not just descending only, but doing a little descending, then ascending, and kind of mixing things up. And we're going to do this in groups of 3 notes. Super, super common blues rock thing. Sounds amazing. And it builds up synchronicity in the hands and gets you adding these kind of juicy licks into the playing. So here, we could do something like this. So let's break this down a little bit slower. You start in that same position, 8-5 pull off on the E string. Then down to the 8th fret on the B string, which is that 3rd note in the first 3-note grouping. That's our first little 3 notes. And then rather than continuing to descend down the scale shape, we ascend. So we go then to the 5th fret on the E string. And then we do another 3-note grouping, pulling off 8-5 on the B string. So. Then we continue that process down to the G string, playing the blue note. And here we just do our 3-note grouping is just back and forth. Blue note on the G, 8th fret, 5th note on the 5th fret on the B, back to the blue note. And then our final 3rd note grouping, 7-5 pull off on the G, and then down to the tonic note of A on the D string to finish things off. So, lovely little kind of exercise to try, get you used to those 3-note kind of descending, ascending patterns. Really, really cool, and will help you add a bit of that Jeff Healey vibe and just a bit of that kind of punchy, speedy blues rock vibe, which is amazing if you love players like Healey, Rory Gallagher, Joe Bonamassa, Gary Moore, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all those guys who play with a little bit more punch. So last but not least, bring the speed, have fun, and it's going to sound, just add a little lovely spice to everything that you're doing. And that is it, the key points and concepts that we can take away from what I think is one of the greatest renditions of this iconic kind of blues rock pop song. Just awesome. Have fun practicing, have fun jamming, go deep into each of these ideas, don't just skim over the top of them, because it's always in the granularity that we find the gold. And speaking of going deeper, if you want to access the full free lesson for this, where you'll find tabs, you'll find the diagrams for the exercise that I've just kind of run through there, the speed one, some little bit more information around the theory of what's going on and some of the additional notes that Healey is using, then just click the link below. It's all there for you. You're going to have a blast. You're going to push your blues guitar playing to the next level, and it's going to be just wonderful. So, that's it, guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the practice, and I'll see you next time.